Juan Williams, Eric Bowling, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President Trump had his first face-to-face meeting with German Chancellor Angela Merkel today. The relationship had been a bit strained since the campaign when Mr. Trump accused the Chancellor of ruining Germany with the influx of refugees. At a joint press conference this afternoon, the president defended his agenda to protect the U.S. from radical Islamic terror.
Our two countries must continue to work together to protect our people from radical Islamic terrorism and to defeat ISIS. We also recognize that immigration security is national security. We must protect our citizens from those who seek to spread terrorism, extremism, and violence inside our borders. Immigration is a privilege, not a right, and the safety of our citizens must always come first, without question.
Merkel defended her commitment to helping refugees despite the threat posed to her country.
We have to protect our external borders because, and there we have to work on the basis of mutual interest with our neighbors. Migration, immigration, integration has to be worked on. Obviously, traffickers have to be stopped, but this has to be done by looking at the refugees as well, giving them opportunities to shape their own lives where they are, help countries who right now are not in an ability to do so, sometimes because they have civil war. I think that's the right way of going about it.
Okay, well, a lot of discussion, people saying, how did this go today, Dana, between the president and Angela Merkel, saying perhaps it was a little bit strained over these issues of refugees. It could have been,
but I do think it could have been more strained. I mean, there's some talk that he ignored her request for a handshake. I'd like to believe that he just didn't hear the request and that was just an awkward moment. But I don't think anyone will dwell on it. And I think this continues the introduction of several of world leaders that come to the White House to meet the president. This is actually important for her back home. So one of the things I like to do when you think about a joint session like this is not what they were trying to accomplish together, which I think today was just establishing a personal relationship because they will have to work together on several issues. But if you think about their domestic audience, in particular her, so she is facing a pretty tough re-election. She's been in office for a long time. There's interest in a guy named Schultz, who is running a very anti-Trump campaign. Now, he's not bound by any of the restrictions of office as she is. So she's like, I have to be the leader of this country. And I think that this visit showed back home for her domestic audience that she is the mature adult, the right politician to be able to have a relationship with the United States and to figure out a way to keep Germany in the forefront of the EU. So domestically for her, I think it was good, and for the president, just fine.
Just fine. Okay. So, Eric, what did you make of the interaction between the two, and do you think any progress made?
I don't know if there's any progress made. I don't think there was any pushback at all. I think I agree with Dana. It was a very matter-of-fact, very kind of formal feeling type of meeting. I think the two themes that really defined Donald Trump's candidacy and presidency, anti-globalism and pro-economic nationalism, were front and center. If you listen to not only the comments President Trump made, but also the answers to some of the questions, he hit on two big things. For me, I heard something very important when he was talking about trade. He said he's a fair trader and a free trader. But right before that, he said something that really caught my attention. He said reciprocal trade policies. And the point I'm trying to pull out here is the reciprocal part. If you go into some of these other countries, they talk China, Brazil, Cuba, European Union, we pay massive amounts of money to put our products into those countries. They don't have that same onerous burden to put their products into ours. So the reciprocal word he threw in there means it's a heads up. And Dana and I have talked about this for a while, about how they're going to administer a border tax to pay for some of these things. That may be the first shot across the bow of these countries saying, hey, if you're charging us, China, 3.4%, you may get charged that same 3.4% to bring your stuff back in here. Brazil, 8.3%. The other one, very quickly, that's trade. Also security. You know, we talk about NATO. The U.S., the requirement, the alleged requirement under NATO is that 2% of your GDP as a NATO country you're supposed to spend on defense. Right. Germany happens to spend only about 1.2% of their GDP on defense, so they're going to need to get their funding of NATO up. The United States does 3%. France, Germany, and Turkey are below the 2%. Italy, Belgium, Spain, Hungary, and a couple others are below 1%. So in order for security, the world, if they want us to continue to play by the NATO rules, needs to step up.
And that's something he talked about during his campaign. I'll get Greg and Juan in now, but the president fielded a question from a German reporter about his America First agenda and pushed back against a perception in Europe that he is pursuing isolationist policies.
I don't believe in an isolationist policy, but I also believe a policy of trade should be a fair policy. And the United States has been treated very, very unfairly by many countries over the years, and that's going to stop. But I'm not an isolationist. I'm a free trader, but I'm also a fair trader. I don't know what newspaper you're reading, but I guess that would be another example of, as you say, fake news.
Oh, my God. Never misses a chance. Never misses a chance. Okay, Greg, what do you make of this?
Well, I have 2 points to raise. Let's talk about the trade thing. Germany makes amazing cars. Let's be honest, some of the greatest cars in the world. Guess where they make a lot of them?
Here.
Here. They make 400,000 of them in South Carolina, which is amazing.
And I do like a nice Mercedes.
Yes, and the trade deficit is deceptive. Reciprocity is hard when you have a population of 80 million people, and America is 4 times larger with 320 million. Our GDP is 17 trillion. Their GDP is 3.73 trillion. Thank you, Wikipedia. You're welcome, Greg. So the key distinction here when you're talking about deficits is you've got to look at size and why the deficit really isn't as important as they make it out to be. And free trade does matter. Germany helps our country. There's 750,000 American jobs because of German companies in the United States. Now on to this stuff about...
Can I just address that before you go on to the next one? But if you threaten to say to China, you're charging us 3.4%, we're going to charge you 3.4%, maybe you get them to lower it. Maybe you get it down to the global average of 2.5%, and you save American corporations putting products into China a boatload of money.
But Eric, I was looking at Germany on Wikipedia, not on China.
Well, Germany.
Look during the break.
I want to talk about the...
then Juanito.
The migration thing. We keep positioning this argument as you're either pro or anti-refugee, and it's not fair because we are pro-refugee. We're just pro-refugee wisely. You know, Trump looks at Germany and says, we can't do all that. It's like when you look at a friend of yours who gets married and gains a lot of weight. Oh, wow, he really let himself go. We're not going to let ourselves go. We as a country cannot let ourselves go. We watched in the migrant process, we watched Germany essentially let itself go, and it's going to take a long time for that to change. So I think that Angela, I'm still not sure, lecturing or talking about refugees, to us is like, you know, Hillary lecturing you about winning, or her husband lecturing you about keeping his pants up. This is not, it's not her place to tell us because they're dealing with a huge problem.
Low refugee diet?
Yes.
Exactly.
Well,
Okay,
actually, we're Slim Jim compared to Germany.
Oh, definitely.
We don't let them. I mean, they've let millions in, so for their smaller population, proportionately, they have done a great deal, and they see it as a mercy mission. They do not see it.
But why do they do that?
There are some who do.
Because they feel guilty about the past.
Well, that's arguable.
So. Yeah.
That's
Ask
possible.
their
It's also possible that they see this in a way that I think we need to shift, which is that they're bringing younger people in who are willing and able to stir their economic engine.
Or just stir literally pots.
No, I don't think so.
Because they're looking for young people to take care of older people.
Well, that's right. If you look at it in terms of Social Security, I thought you were saying stir trouble, but I don't think...
I mean like actually cook.
Okay, all right. And I think it's the similar thing in response to what Eric was saying. You got to worry that the other side, Eric, punches back and says, oh, you guys want a trade war? We're cool, glad to... So in terms of what...
a trade war with us.
Oh, that's right. Oh, nobody. We're so powerful. But this is what Greg was talking about. If you look at BMW, you look at Siemens, guess what? Those are companies that employ Americans and export overseas from the United States. There's benefit there. I think the key thing about this meeting...
A German car built in America exported to Germany isn't charged the import.
I'm telling you, it's exported all over the world, and it's a benefit because we get the jobs. And I mean, I thought this was the jobs president. So I think he needs to think through. It's not just a one-way street. But the reason I thought this meeting was so interesting is that, you know, you listen to Trump, and it's all about this kind of populist, nationalist, the kind of things we've been hearing about. And this week you had, in the Dutch election, Geert Wilder, who is, you know, the Trump of the Netherlands, lose. And then you have, you know, I guess in France, Marie Le Pen is coming up. But right now, the message that's being sent is that populist energy seems to be fading. And by the way, in terms of Angela Merkel herself, it seems like her chances of re-election, picking up on what Dana was talking about, are growing.
Have you seen the cover of The Economist?
No.
The cover of The Economist has the exact opposite thesis, that globalism is on its way down,
right,
and economic nationalism around the world
clear.
is on its way. And they're using hot air balloons, lifting all these countries that are deciding to pull back on these trade agreements and focus solely within their own border.
Well, clearly Germany is not pulling back on trade agreements. In fact, the Germans, right before this meeting with Donald Trump, they were talking to the Chinese about building new relationships to replace the U.S.
You use one example.
I'm just citing.
And then you claim Marine Le Pen is on her way down. We don't know yet.
Well, there's also
we
another
don't. But I know for a fact what happened to Geert Wilders.
That's a populist.
Correct. We
as well.
would agree with that.
Okay, Dana.
Well, I just think that one of the things where Merkel and Trump could possibly agree on the refugee issue is the key to this is actually solving the refugee problem at its source. And President Trump has said that he'd like to see something about some safe zones in Syria or something. And all of those countries Eric mentioned that are part of NATO, everybody has a national interest in helping solve this problem because they're exporting terror from that region. They're not only exporting terror, but they're leaving many people desperate and hopeless. So people who have big hearts, they want to bring them into their countries because they care, but then there's a security risk. And the solution to it is to solve it at its source. And somebody like Merkel and Trump together as a partnership leading NATO in May at their meeting could actually be very helpful.
Yeah, it would be a very strong alliance. And perhaps this was the first step towards that because they really needed to meet in person.
So
and
let me just quickly add on to that I think I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear them talk about Vladimir Putin, because I think Merkel has a view of Putin and she has experience with Putin, especially in terms of the Ukraine, the sanctions, and the like. Very different from Donald Trump.
Well, we happen to be able to get in Russia in the A block. There we go. All right. Well, the president gave a morbid diagnosis for Obamacare today. It's dead. Hear that coming up. And a programming note, it's your lucky day on this St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you, guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day!
That's something. The president met earlier with a group of conservative lawmakers to rally more support for the GOP's antidote to Obamacare.
I want everyone to know I'm 100% behind this. I want everybody to know that the press has not been speaking properly about how great this is going to be. It's fake news. This is going to be great. I also want people to know that Obamacare is dead. It's a dead health care plan. It's not even a health care plan, frankly. It's a disaster. Obamacare's dead. Nothing to do with these people, nothing to do with me. It's on respirator, and it's just about ready to implode.
A vote on the legislation is expected in the House next Thursday. At his news conference earlier, Mr. Trump expressed confidence the bill will pass.
It's going to be passed, I believe, I think, substantially and pretty quickly. I think we have a very unified Republican Party. There's a great unification. Health care is a very, very difficult subject. It's a very complex subject, and it's a subject that, you know, goes both ways. You do something for one side, and the other side doesn't like it. But it's really something that's come together very well, and I think it's going to be very, very popular, extremely popular.
Okay.
So, Greg, the president is clearly putting his prestige now on the line. He has these members, 13 members in the Oval Office. He says he's convinced them. He says he's going to do more in terms of work requirements, blocking, Medicaid is block grants instead of caps. Is this going to be a winning? Is this the winning ticket?
This is. We were talking about this with a friend. He loves this sort of thing. He's a natural salesman. He likes to build stuff, hence the wall. He likes to sell stuff, hence the bill. Scott Adams calls him the master persuader. So the harder it is to sell something, the more he loves selling it. And he's got an interesting opposition, and that is everywhere you go, no matter what, it's always about killing grandma, killing the kids. It's like everything Republicans do, you end up killing somebody. Right. And that argument, you're finding out, is losing more and more power and weight. You know, if Trump's health bill made all health care free, you know, the media would say, well, what about my pets? What about my spa treatments? I want massages. So you can't win. So I think he's aware of that, and I think he relishes going in and persuading, and it sounds like he's doing it.
Well, so Greg says he can't win. Do you believe it?
No, I think he said that he can win.
That's not
No,
what he
I said he can win. I was talking about against the left. You can't win.
No, meaning that you can't. Meaning that the left is never. Even if Trump were to say, "Okay, here's universal health care," that the left would still say, "But wait, I want more."
No,
that's
but the problem here.
Right?
So the reason I misunderstood the professor is that in fact Republicans are the ones that he's persuading.
But I think that he is actually doing it. Today was the best day for this bill in its short week-long history, partly because they were able to get the bill through the third committee with only 3 defections from the Republicans. That's actually pretty good. He's had a lot of meetings this week. They don't have a lot of air cover from the outside, but I think that instead of like Obamacare that dragged out for months, they are pushing this through very quickly. And I think that when he said today, I'm 100% behind this bill, that the members of Congress know that President Trump and Ryan are in lockstep on this. And I bet that next Thursday it is going to pass because he decided to put his shoulder behind it and to stand with Ryan. Whether you like the bill or not, I still think it will pass next Thursday.
Yeah. So, Eric, do you agree that it'll pass next Thursday?
I hope not. I really hope not. I'm not. Dana's 100% right when he said I'm 100% behind this bill. He just renamed it from Ryan Care, which I've been calling it for a while, to Trump Care. Well, here are the numbers.
Better brand building.
There are 237 House members who are Republican. You need 218 to pass. You need 19. That means you have a 19 wiggle room. There's 29 members of the Freedom Caucus who vote as a group. These guys, if you have the majority of the Freedom Caucus on board, but as soon as
they want to get to yes, I think they want to support the president.
Well, immediately when I heard that, my jaw dropped. I was listening to this press conference. I'm like, did he just say I'm 100% behind this? It will pass. I started making calls.
I liked
it. Freedom Caucus.
From a political standpoint, it's impressive.
They weren't in that meeting though. The Freedom Caucus, most of the Freedom Caucus members weren't in that meeting. So I'm like, what don't I know? And apparently there's a lot I don't know.
They're probably being reached out to by others, like by Pence.
Well, they could be, but this was Republican Study Committee folks who were in that meeting. And again, he's trying to just to fix it. Remember, Paul Ryan was opposed to any changes, but this week now he says he's changes.
Freedom Caucus, you need it's a proxy.
He needs it bad. Okay, so this week, Kimberly, Fox News polling indicated 54% of Americans disapprove of the Republican plan. But President Trump, who initially didn't seem like he was totally behind it, now, as Eric says it's my plan. I'm with it, and it's going to pass.
Rasmussen poll says 48% of Americans agree with the president that Obamacare is collapsing. So what he's saying is the United States needs to act decisively to protect Americans and give them quality health care. I think this was a turning point today. I agree with Dana that he put some muscle behind it. He put the magic of the Trump branding and said, look, I'm going to own this. It's not just Ryan Care. This is something I support. And he's showing that, look, I've got skin in the game. I'm going to make sure that it gets through. So I believe him. I take him at his word that he's going to go out there and sell it, that he's going to push it, and even if they have to go one by one. But he also said something important, which is that they made some changes. So perhaps there's been some accommodations that are going to be pivotal, and that's going to be able to get it through.
Just point one thing out. The only way to get the premiums down, the only way is to offer competition against state lines. And the only way to get that
across
through
state lines
is 60 votes in the Senate.
Right.
How in the world are you going to get 60 votes in the Senate?
That's the point. And also, he says Obamacare is dead, and I'm just thinking to myself, wait a second, they just indicated 12.2 million people enrolled. Well, we'll see what happens.
The barrier reef is dead, you know.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, tragedy.
Maybe Obamacare
died at 25 million. Had a long run.
Years old?
Yeah, died at 25 million
years. You think
years.
we could resuscitate it?
Well, I wouldn't do mouth to mouth.
Oh, okay. Stay right there.
Fastest 7 minutes on. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait for that. The fastest 6 minutes on television. 3 entertaining stories, 7 energetic minutes, 1 enthusiastic host. By the way, the floor director looked at me like, really? You've done this how many times? First up, late night hosts enjoying a ratings bonanza since Donald Trump won the presidency. In fact, Stephen Colbert may have saved his show by upping the Trump shtick on The Late Show. Jimmy Kimmel also rating well by taking shots at the president.
Not only does Donald Trump want to put a stop to federal funding for public broadcasting, he's already started cleaning house at PBS.
I say you're fired.
What?
You're a quitter. And Star Jones kicked your ass, whether you like it or not.
I guess we have to find a new place to live.
That's too bad, but that's the way it goes.
All right, Greg. Look, it's working for them.
I think it's right. You know, that bird is a mooch. It doesn't need government assistance. It's making more money than all of us. And by the way, if you hate government, you hate Trump, why are you taking money from it? By the way, turducken it.
Turducken?
Yeah, turducken the big bird. Just cook it.
Yeah. Cook it.
A lot of meat on there.
Dana, you want to talk about the funding, or you want to talk about the late night host having fun?
Well, I do think like all media is up, right? So all across the board, and everybody is highly energized. Whether you love him or hate him, then you want to read about it, you want to watch it, you can't stop talking about it. It never ends.
Go ahead.
Well, those guys fired me. So I don't have a whole lot of love. But I will say, so I used to be a host, and I used to go out and have to raise money for them. And in the big cities, there's no problem. There is no problem for NPR, Big Bird, who now works for HBO and all that. But no, they don't have a problem. I think they could be self-sufficient. The problem is, intriguingly, when you get out into the small areas, rural areas, don't have big city newspapers, don't have great radio stations. They sometimes don't have cable.
You mean the base?
Oh, you mean Trump world.
But in fact, there was a piece today talking about what we were discussing yesterday in Appalachia, the Delta. He's cutting all those commissions, All
right, KG.
Yeah, I mean, I like humor, right? I mean, I sit across from it every day here, and it seems to enthrall me. But I like to...
It's called my face, Kimberly.
Yes, it's quite funny. I like to watch Jimmy Kimmel. He's my favorite, actually. So I think it's fun, and, it's done in, I think, in a nice way. Some of the stuff I've seen isn't so appropriate, which I've commented on before.
Stay right there, because remember the clip BBC ran of the Skype interview between a newscaster in England and some guy in his home office, where the kids sneak into the room behind him. A couple of comedians from New Zealand had some fun with a parody of that, asking, how would things go down if it were a mom in that same situation?
One of your children has just walked in, but I mean, shifting sands in the region, do you think relations with the North may change?
It's unclear at the moment what effect former President Gun-Hae's impeachment will have on the territories. Unfortunately, discontent in South Korea is not only related to President Gun-Hae's administration.
Sorry, you do look rather busy there. We can reschedule
President Gun-Hae is very likely to face jail time, too.
OK.
I would argue, in an attempt to make an example of her.
Right, so what does this all mean for the future of South Korea?
So the future of South Korea really hangs in the balance.
Oh, my God, is that a bomb?
And it'll be interesting to see...
All right, KG, so she's multitasking.
Oh, my God, do I do that or what? That is my life, like, every day. I don't even know. Yeah, caught on fire a couple times, but it worked out. So you've seen this type of thing. It actually happens, and you're just, like, kind of freaking out, trying to make sure to get everything done at once. It usually happens to me when I'm trying to do radio, but you work it out. And there was a YouTube video the other day of a man doing that with his kids coming in and the nanny freaking out, trying to pull him out of the room.
Right. And your thoughts on this one? Do they own us in this respect?
You just got to give up sometimes. That's terrific. I mean, not only is it terrific, but, I think every woman in the world, apparently, not just Kimberly in the U.S., but I think every woman in the world said, yeah, we deal with it. We make it happen. God bless them.
Look, I like the bomb diffuse.
She had the bomb diffuse. She had the dinner. She steamed the shirt. She didn't take the dog out, though.
Well, and she went to work. She didn't stay home. She was like, I can do it all. You can bring home the bacon fried up in the pan. And I do remember when I first saw that video, you make a split-second decision. It's live television. He wants to do a good job. He decided not to pick up the kid. If he would have picked up the kid, it would have been just as much of a sensation.
Yeah.
I don't agree with anybody here. I thought it was atrocious because it's sexist. They're saying that moms are better than dads at being moms. Why can't dads be moms? We are living in a gender-free society that was heteronormative. It's an attack on people who prefer not to be seen as a mom or a dad. And women can't do everything. I am sorry.
Okay,
oh, my
stay
goodness.
right there to the fellas now. Are you all good dancers, guys? Do you have the moves, or are you dad dancers? Greg, Juan, and I got the moves like Jagger. Prince William? Well, what do you think? Watch. All right, Juan, what do you say? Moves like Jagger?
Hey, look, I think the man's having fun. Let him be. But I just, to me, I don't understand why he can't just go to the club and party. I mean, I go to a club and party. I hope no one's doing that, because I might look worse than my man.
Oh, we know about that one.
Yeah.
Deja vu.
Greg, mom dance, I'm sorry, suburban dad dancer or moves like Bruno Mars?
I think he does all right there, but no one, it just tells you no one is safe. You can't let your dork flag fly for that matter, because somebody has their phone. Even was that at a wedding? Like
It was a club.
But it's like they should have clubs now where you put your phone in a basket when you walk in. You just put it in the basket, or you're not allowed in.
There are places like that. You just don't get invited.
Well, Kimberly.
Well, they take your phone. No one's allowed to bring any kind of electronic devices, and then that's that.
Wait, what are you talking about, Kimberly?
I'm talking about parties.
Which party? Which one are you talking about?
Fun party.
I know which one you're talking
No,
about.
you're not.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't know.
I know exactly what happened there, and it was disgusting.
Oh, my
You should be
gosh.
ashamed of yourself.
You hiding in the tree looking in again?
The future king.
I think what Greg is saying is that Prince William will always have to dance like everybody's watching, which means you probably don't dance at all. Maybe you should just go home and be with your...
That would be the worst of all.
I'm going to throw 2 cents in here very quickly. I love it. I thought it was great.
Right.
I'm just cute. Have some fun.
All right, ahead. Dana's going to...
I took Aaron Landers of Dana Perino and Company on another trip to Africa with Mercy Ships, a global charity that provides free surgical care in developing nations. We were in the Congo in 2013 at the start of Mercy Ships' mission there, and we didn't see the results. This time, we did. Their floating hospital has been docked for 9 months in the Republic of Benin. We got to witness all kinds of miracles aboard. Check this little girl out. She's dancing for a reason, because there's great cause for celebration. 70 patients treated by Mercy Ships the week I arrived in Benin can now see again. Successful cataract surgeries cured their blindness. A celebration of sight was held in their honor, and there was much joy to go around. Little Yanis will also be celebrating soon. He just found out he's a candidate for cataract surgery at the end of the month. And this is his sweet twin sister. They are among nearly 2.5 million citizens of developing nations to receive free surgical care from the selfless staff and volunteers of Mercy Ships, an international charity founded in 1978. The Africa Mercy is the world's largest private hospital ship, filled with volunteers from over 45 nations. 35% of them are American. Dr. Mark Schreim is one of them. The assistant professor at Harvard Medical School volunteers 2 months a year on the ship. I asked him how he and others are able to juggle 2 jobs thousands of miles apart.
A lot of people who do global surgery, who do surgery in low-income countries, are doing it on their vacation time, doing it, time off that they have. Most of my career in the U.S. is a research career. It's 20% clinical, and so I'm able to juggle the research and still do the research here on the ship. People are here to treat the patients and to serve the patients and serve the people that the countries that we're in.
Dr. Schreim performed 4 surgeries alone our first morning on board. Many patients get to spend the time outside on Friday afternoons. I played Connect 4 with one of them on Deck 7. He beat me twice. Very good. But I surprised us both when I won a game. In addition to treatment on board, ship-based teams also serve in local villages, providing a wide array of services. While I was there, a party was held for children from a local orphanage. Ashley Reeves co-runs it with her husband, John. They're adopting the cute little toddler she's holding, named Kojo. Remarkably, Ashley wishes she could do more to help others in need.
I think I've resolved to realize that I can't change the world, but I can change some part of the world.
Oh, so children are ticklish everywhere.
Yes.
This is Mercy's Hope Center. It's where patients well enough to leave the ship go to fully recover, and where some pre-op patients are sent to prepare. It's run by an American retiree named Martha Rodriguez. When she retired, she wasn't ready to settle. She was ready to do. And boy, has she done a lot. Perhaps the most touching moment of my trip was the celebration for 3 women who just had their fistulas successfully repaired. Trauma during childbirth left holes between their bladder and birth canal, leaving them incontinent for years. Sadly, many fistula sufferers are ostracized for their condition in this part of the world. Nurse Amy Jones has treated many of them. When they have this condition,
what happens to them usually back home. A lot of the time they will be completely marginalised. They'll be kicked out of their villages. They will be divorced by their husbands.
Fistula patients are given a new dress after their surgery as a symbol of their restored life.
It's just really a celebration of women. It's a celebration that they've been through something terrible and they've come out the other side.
Then when I met them, they told me that they would treat me free of charge. And they said, okay, we are going to do the surgery for you tomorrow. And I was amazed. I said, huh?
There weren't many dry eyes in the room, full of song, dance, and prayer. At the end of the ceremony, the nurse in charge of the women's clinic had one request for the 3 honorees. She said, "All we ask is that when you leave here today, let God walk with you. You are not alone. God is walking with mercy ships to help bring hope and healing all around the world."
So the Africa Mercy heads to Cameroon this summer. To find out more about the organization, you can check out opportunities for volunteering. You go to mercyships.org. I can tell you they need a lot of positions filled. Engineers, dentists, cooks, and teachers, and they absolutely need a principal right away.
Oh, I would be the greatest principal. I've always wanted to be a principal. I have a question, though. If I do go, would I be able to get some elective work done on myself? Like maybe a little lipo, Botox?
I don't think that they don't have that capability yet. Maybe that will come in the future. They're a little busy. You'd probably be low on the priority list.
I'd be a really good principal.
No, you'd be really bad.
Boat principal.
I have something.
You would take
do you
all the
remember
medical
last Friday when I was on, and you asked me how they could help, how we could help? So, and I said they need a mechanic. The next morning, a 25-year-old Christian man from here in America, who's a veteran of the Iraq War, said he is a certified mechanic and he's interested, and he did a full application.
Wow.
So they're
So
interviewing.
Dana, I read your piece on FoxNews.com.
Yes.
And one of the things you pointed out was the difficulty in follow-up, because I guess people leave and there's no way for them.
Well, so the ships, the ship might come back to Benin in a few years, but in between then it is hard to, like here, if you have surgery, you go back to the doctor if you have a problem, or you might have might do a research study on you. And there it's hard. There is a little boy named Emmanuel from Congo that we're going to try to find, because he was saved by them on that first day. It was amazing. But Eric, you had a question.
Very quickly, Dana. So obviously in these situations you have to perform triage. You take the most sick and the most needy first. Can you give us a sense of the gap between available resources and needed resources?
In a third world country like Benin. I just say Benin felt like the most hopeful African country I'd been to, in terms of they have a new president who's a businessman who is trying to improve the economy. But the healthcare, it's dire. And especially in a port city like Cotonou, like you could probably maybe see a doctor for some things, but like those women there that were getting help for the fistulas, some of them had tried to been repaired 3 times, and you have to pay each time. And it's very hard to get the money. So KG had a question.
I just want to say, I mean, when you did this last time, I know my brother regularly contributes, and just so people can go to www.mercyships.org, because you see the meaningful work. And thank you, Dana.
They were great. So.
Why not ask them to pay for public art? Why is that so hard? Why should middle class and poor taxpayers have to pay for it? I don't get it.
First of all, why is it mutually exclusive? Why wouldn't our government, our great nation, invest in something that brings back $10 for every dollar invested, that helps the military, that makes sure that underserved populations get to college, that makes for a better workforce? I mean, we have all the data. And it absolutely stumps me as to why anyone would be against such a small investment that brings back such a
Well, if it's such a good investment, we should be spending $1 trillion on it. But let me just ask you this. You said it helped the arts.
I'm all for that.
What role did the NEA play in, say, the Battle of Fallujah?
Let's look at the NEA and what role it plays. Let's look at what role the NEA plays in making America great. Are we for, you're on one team, I'm on another team, but are we both for economic development in this country?
Right.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Are we both here to, are we trying to make sure that the next generation is a leading generation. You have kids, I have kids. Do we want them to be complete and full citizens working to their maximum potential? I'm on the blue team.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We also don't want our kids to be addicted to heroin, which is the single most common cause of death for people under 30 in lots of states. Why not take that money and fund drug rehabilitation? I mean, look, there are a lot of demands on our money. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
grants do fund programs that keep kids away from drugs, away from the streets. That's what's so perfect.
They're not working that well in Kentucky right now, let me just say that. But can I just ask you a question that I've always wanted to ask someone who knows artists well, and you're obviously that person. Why would an artist want to take government money? I'm a journalist. I would never take government money because then I'd be owned by the government. I'd be a puppet of the state. I'd be producing propaganda. Journalists are supposed to be independent-minded. Why in the world would they want to be pawns of government? Basically DMV workers with shabbier outfits.
What I'd like to hope is that the integrity of the National Endowment of the Arts stays, and that it is not shackles upon an artist, but rather gives an artist seed money to create work and to create programs to not only enrich the lives of others in their community, but to make money. And what I want
is that the purpose of art, is to make money? I mean, isn't a government-funded artist an oxymoron? The purpose of the arts is to make for a rich and cultured population.
But if you're all about making money and economic development, that's what's so great. The arts can do that too.
Well, I didn't know what a great money-making scheme it was. I should have become an artist.
No, what we need you to do is we need you to be part of the Right to Bear Arts.
Okay, but I'm just saying, isn't it? Don't you think it's kind of funny that artists who are, you know, against the grain and thinking for themselves, all of a sudden they're queuing up for their handouts from taxpayers? There's never been a national referendum on this. I mean, the average person doesn't know what his money's going to. Why wouldn't artists just strike out on their own and be independent like they're supposed to be? They're artists.
The NEA grants, what they're designed to do is to be seed money. To grow the artist, to grow whatever product that artist is creating to better help society. Now, but I do want to understand this.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we want to invest in something, the arts, that we know makes us a first world power? That's
I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by art. I mean, are you talking about, you know, paintings of dogs playing poker and Lee Greenwood? I mean, I'm kind of for that. If it's crucifixes in urine, not for it. I mean, that's kind of the point. You can't reach a consensus on what art is. So maybe
come on. So you're bringing. What do you think that arts is in the community? Whether it's helping wounded warriors, whether it's medical treatment. I mean, that's what's so great about the arts. The arts is the everyman issue, and I am so happy. And you are an artist,
Robin. We're out of time, but in art.
But we're not out of arts.
No, we're not. Thanks a lot. Well, on the show, we do our best to expose fake scandals covered by the press. There are a lot of them. A ton of reporters, including many White House correspondents, prefer to push conspiracies without evidence rather than ask about real issues. And they don't like it when reporters with a different agenda enter their safe space. In fact, including to one reporter, dissidents in the White House briefing room are resented and bullied for not adhering to a certain line. Caitlin Collins is a White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. She's new to the beat, and she joins us now. Caitlin, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So there was this amazing moment in January. So Sean Spice, the new press secretary, asked the first question not to the AP reporter, but to the reporter from the New York Post. All of a sudden, there was this uproar on Twitter. Reporters who literally weren't even born when Barack Obama was elected were complaining about the breach of tradition. Why the resentment?
The press is throwing a royal tantrum because they can't control what the country is talking about. For the last 8 years, they've all decided what the question should be, and they've all gone in there and asked the same question. And now that they're not being called on, they can't control what the news is about, and it's driving them crazy.
So you show up there right after the inauguration. You haven't covered the White House before. You don't work at the Boston Globe or the New York Times. What kind of reception did you get?
It's definitely a little tense, but I'm not really there to impress them. I'm there to ask the questions my readers want answered, and I'm not there to ask what they want me to ask. I don't get the questions that CNN wants. I don't get the questions that MSNBC wants. I ask what my readers want me to ask, because outside in the real world where the other 300 million people live, they don't care about, you know, personnel issues that MSNBC is asking.
So you actually took some heat from other reporters when you, at a press conference, at the moment when Mike Flynn was having all his troubles, National Security Advisor, you asked a question to the podium about what the foreign policy challenges facing the country are. And what was the response to that?
It was very heated. I got a lot of criticism on Twitter. A lot of people came up to me and asked if the White House told me what to ask, which is offensive. And I asked a big picture question about national security and who we're going to get into a war with next. And that matters more to real people than a personnel question of who's working in the White House. No one will remember Mike Flynn's name by next year.
I think that's totally fair. You're obviously pretty immune to the criticism of your peers, but what effect does it have, that kind of groupthink or that enforced conformity, on other reporters there?
It's definitely not a good mix for that, because then other people feel pressured to ask what everyone else is asking. They look up to someone on their left and they're asking about, wiretapping, so they ask about wiretapping as well. But the point of 75 reporters being in that briefing room is that we all ask different questions.
Right.
If we all go in there and ask the same question 10 different ways, what does that accomplish? Who does that serve?
So the president has attacked the press intensely, like no other president has ever gone after the press like this. What does that do to the reporters covering the briefing every day?
People are a little hysterical about his criticism. Yes, he hates the press. Yes, he's very vocal about it. But what president has not hated the press? We make their lives harder, and they all hate us. They may not all talk about it, but they definitely hate us.
Yes, they do.
So, but people are taking it really personally, and you shouldn't take the president's criticism personally. It shouldn't affect your reporting, but you can tell when you read the New York Times and CNN that it does affect their reporting, and that's not what should happen. I don't take my cues from the president. I report on him. I don't report to him.
So you think that there's a personal element to this? They don't like him because he criticized.
Because he calls them out by their names, and they don't like that, and then they get a lot of heat on Twitter, and then it makes them resent him. Not for his policies and not for not following through on his campaign promises, but for who he is as a person. And that's not your job. Your job is not to get your feelings hurt.
No, that's exactly right. Twitter seems to play a huge role in the attitudes of White House reporters.
It does. It feeds their egos. They like to know how many people follow them, who's praising them. You should not pay attention to anything anyone says on the internet, though.
That is pathetic. Do you see people checking Twitter in the briefing?
Constantly. Everyone's updating it constantly. They're tweeting. It's a big part of it. But that's understandable. The president uses Twitter a lot. It's a new medium that everyone is, refascinated with Donald Trump being in the White House.
Boy, I'm sorry. I don't like that the president uses Twitter. I don't like that reporters use Twitter. I just think it's weird. But I guess I'm not in charge. Caitlin Collins, thanks for joining us, of the Daily Caller. Full disclosure, I helped found the Daily Caller, but no longer have an editorial role there, sadly. Remember Donna Brazile? Last fall, DNC emails published by WikiLeaks revealed that Brazile, while working as a CNN contributor, that's right, a television contributor, helped rig the Democratic primary by forwarding debate questions to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, at the time, Brazile refused to admit her complicity. She even suggested the emails had been forged, in a pretty famous back and forth with Megyn Kelly, you may remember. Well, today, in an essay for Time magazine, which still exists, Brazile finally admitted she is guilty. Doesn't mean she's taking full responsibility. In her essay, she says the leaked questions are really not such a big deal, and the real scandal is that, dun-dun-dun, Russian hackers, of course, could sway the election by exposing a perfectly innocent action. Some people are just never guilty, apparently. Well, up next, the writer says Donald Trump needs to ditch Paul Ryan's health care plan or he will irreversibly ruin his own presidency before spring turns to summer. Also, we'll update you on hypocrisy at NBC News for yet another night. We have a new name to add to the list of those complicit in the secret plot to scuttle the Trump campaign last fall. Stay tuned for that. President Trump has embraced House Speaker Paul Ryan's proposal to replace Obamacare, but one writer says Ryan's plan is catastrophically bad, and if Trump keeps following it, he will destroy his own political career for good. Reihan Salam is executive editor at National Review. He's also a columnist at Slate. In a recent piece, he wrote that the American Health Care Act would particularly hurt lower middle-class people, the very voting bloc that handed Donald Trump the presidency. Meanwhile, it would help the wealthy by cutting their taxes. He says Trump ought to reject the bill post-haste. Reihan Salam joins us tonight. Ryan, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for
having me. So you put out there's a gulf, broad gulf, between what Trump ran on and the ideological agenda of the Republican leadership in the Congress. Is that kind of where it starts?
I am going to tell you a secret, Tucker.
Okay.
There were a lot of Republicans, Paul Ryan included, who did not want Donald Trump to win.
That's for sure.
This is going to be shocking news to you, and why is that? It's because Donald Trump challenged many of the core beliefs of folks like Paul Ryan on issues like immigration, of course, on national security, but also on the safety net. Donald Trump said, I am going to defend the safety net for ordinary Americans, not because I believe in big government, but because nationalism isn't just divisiveness. Nationalism is also saying we are all in this together, and we're going to look out for the weakest among us. That was a compelling message.
That's been so undercovered. You know, the Access Hollywood tape, his views on the wall, those took up all the ink. But his economic program was basically ignored, as was the gap between his beliefs and those of the Reagan proteges still running the Republican caucus.
Well, you got to wonder, I mean, you know, why is it that Donald Trump, who said a lot of very controversial things,
yes,
why is it that he won the votes of almost 30% of Latinos? That's something that surprised a lot of people. Why is it that he won the votes of a lot of lower middle class, working class folks who never would have dreamed of voting for a Republican before?
Right.
It is because he was a different kind of Republican. Donald Trump isn't perfect, but one thing he definitely got right is that there's a big audience for that we're in this together politics.
Yes. This health care bill does not reflect that.
It does not. And actually, even in his interview with you earlier this week, you could tell that Donald Trump knows that. And he's saying that, look, you know, I'm going to want to protect our people. But the problem is that this bill, as it stands right now, here's what it does. You know, you might believe that Medicaid is a program that's flawed.
Yes.
You know, I absolutely believe that. But you're going to cut $880 billion in Medicaid funding, and you're also going to cut taxes for rich people by $880 billion. It's one thing to say we're going to fix this program to make it more sustainable, to make sure that it serves people and what have you. But if in the same legislation you're also eliminating taxes for mostly rich folks by exactly that same amount, that doesn't send a good signal. You need to win people's trust. And that's what Donald Trump needs to do if he's going to build on his distinctive national agenda.
So a lot of people I know assume this bill will not get through the Senate. It's not going to become law. It will not reach his desk. Let's just assume that's true. Even if it's not true, what should the president do with this bill?
Look, I think that he needs to say we need to start over again. We need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we have a program that is going to win broad support and that's going to be sure that vulnerable folks are not harmed first.
And if he doesn't do that?
If he doesn't do that, he's going to be in trouble. So here's the thing. Again, trust matters a whole heck of a lot in politics. There were a lot of people who were rattled by Donald Trump. They thought he was erratic here and there, but fundamentally, in their gut, they felt like he's on my side.
Yes.
I trust him. So how do you establish trust? The way you establish trust is with the first actions you take. If the first action you take is cutting Medicaid while cutting taxes for the rich, who's going to believe you when you say that, hey, I want to be sure that everyone's taken care of, and you're right, I might want to cut taxes, but that's not my first and highest priority. My first and highest priority is protecting vulnerable Americans.
We're almost out of time, but how did this happen?
You know, I think partly it's because Donald Trump had a vision, and it's a vision that won him the presidency, but he doesn't have a lot of people around him who fully share that vision.
Right.
He has a lot of people who are basically old-school Republicans, the kind of people that a lot of voters rejected in the Republican primaries, who are the ones he's relying on. Now, he's a guy who thinks for himself, but he's also someone who needs to think harder about a disciplined plan to implement his agenda, not someone else's agenda.
If this fails, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough.
It definitely will.
Ryan, that was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand shouted at the Commandant of the Marine Corps this week in a hearing in the Senate. We'll talk to a Republican who says the senator's wrath was not out of line. Wait till you see the tape. It's remarkable, actually. Well, yesterday we reminded you that NBC News deliberately leaked the Access Hollywood tape to the Washington Post in an effort to shut down the 2016 Trump campaign just 2 days before a presidential debate. We also reminded you that NBC News president Andrew Lack was fully aware of that effort and lied about it later. Well, tonight we can add another name to the list. According to our sources, it appears that MSNBC President Phil Griffin also knew about the decision to leak the tape. We reached out to Phil Griffin today for comment, but we haven't heard back today. We'll tell you if we do. Despite apparently being complicit in an attempt to throw the election, Griffin's news network continues to pursue the Russian hacking story, which has produced no evidence at all that Russian agents swayed the outcome of last fall's election. We'll continue to follow this story and let you know every time NBC declines to comment. We're going to keep it up. Well, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York came down positively unglued on Tuesday, barking at the Commandant of the Marine Corps for nearly 2 minutes while blaming him for not stopping sexual harassment in the Corps. Here's part of it. Watch.
When you say to us, it's got to be different, that rings hollow. I don't know what you mean when you say that. Why does it have to be different? Because you all of a sudden feel that it has to be different? Who has been held accountable? I very much align myself with Senator Fisher's comments. Who has been held responsible? Have you actually investigated and found guilty anybody? If we can't crack Facebook, how are we supposed to be able to confront Russian aggression and cyber hacking throughout our military? It is a serious problem when we have members of our military denigrating female Marines who will give their life to this country in the way they have, with no response from leadership. I can tell you, your answers today are unsatisfactory. They do not go far enough. And I would like you to know what you intend to do to the commanders who are responsible for good order and discipline. All of this behavior is in violation of Article 120 and Article 34 as so stated. They are violating the Code of Criminal Justice. Why are commanders who have asked for all responsibility to deal with sexual assault and these behaviors, for the 5 years this committee has been focused on this issue, you have demanded that you maintain control of all these issues. But where's the accountability for failure? Who is being held accountable for doing nothing since 2013? Who? Which commander? I am very...
Congressman Lee Zeldin is a Republican representing the state of New York. He's also a veteran. He joins us now. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. Sure. This seemed out of proportion, for one, given the crime that she was talking about, which is Marines putting up nude pictures of women they had dated who were also Marines. Awful. I would never defend that. I think it's cruel. But for, I think, by most accounts, the least impressive senator of the United States Senate to basically scream at a man who served as a Marine officer for 42 years in a public hearing is a little over the top, don't you think?
Senator Gillibrand was certainly pretty fired up. There are definitely different ways to approach that questioning of the Marine general. I do believe General Neller handled that interaction with outstanding leadership. He didn't make any excuses. He took full ownership and responsibility over the entire situation. I don't know if if I would approach it the same way that Senator Gillibrand did, but I thought that she was just genuinely emotional and speaking out on behalf of those victims and wanting to see the Marine Corps and all branches of our military take action to ensure that this doesn't continue.
Yeah.
That goal is one I certainly agree with.
Well, sure. I mean, no one wants to see that kind of stuff. The purpose of the Marine Corps is to fight and win wars. I didn't see any mention of that. But I guess it's the proportion here. So General Neller is not responsible for putting those pictures up. There's no evidence that he favors it or he's gone lightly on it. And this is clearly just grandstanding. I mean, and it's something she's engaged in repeatedly. Anybody who's followed her career knows she said all kinds of totally outrageous and unsupportable things over the years on this topic. I just don't think it's appropriate to do that to someone like General Neller, would you say?
Watching the entire exchange and seeing General Neller's handling of it, knowing who's sitting in that chair, knowing that he's someone who wants there to be accountability, that he would want there to be an investigation that yields to wherever crimes can be identified for people to be prosecuted, for non-judicial punishment, for corrective training, to improve the culture of the Marine Corps. Knowing that General Neller's in that chair over the course of decades of service, he's been through a whole lot where he's not going to be rattled by any one senator's questioning. For that particular exchange, I think on both sides, Senator Gillibrand's comments as well as General Neller's comments, it sends a message to any of the individuals involved in posting these pictures, as well as sending a message for any of those female victims. We need to find out which females. Maybe there's a picture out there where a female consented, maybe they didn't consent. Maybe there was access to a particular database for posting a photo that was illegal. So it's not like there's just one particular crime that might have been committed or the stories might have been the same.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things to worry about with the U.S. Armed Forces, especially the Marine Corps, but most of them revolve around their capacity to defend the United States of America. And I'm not really sure why Congress would be involved in something like this in the first place. For the third time, not making any defense of this is bad. But let's be real here. Here's the real agenda. This is part of what Senator Gillibrand said, and I think it gets to what she's really after. Watch this.
I am very concerned that this is part of a culture that is resulting in the high levels of sexual assault.
The old culture of the military line. Here's what it's really about, and you know this as well as I, you're a veteran, is that many on the left, the cultural left, the frivolous cultural left that Senator Gillibrand so ably represents, hate the culture of the military because it's warlike and masculine, and they want to change that. That's what this is really about.
Yeah, I certainly experienced both during my time when I first started Army ROTC. President Clinton was in office. Going through President Bush and then President Obama, I still serve in the Army Reserves. I do feel like over the course of the last couple of years, especially, there's been a little bit more of a social engineering of the military. I recently had Army Reserve training where the entire Sunday morning was spent on transgender training. And what we should be focusing most importantly for our service members is ensuring that they are best prepared for combat to protect and defend our country, the #1, only actually mandatory function of our federal government constitutionally to provide for the common defense. So that should be priority #1, and we need to make sure that with the new administration and with General Mattis that our Department of Defense goes away from social engineering and more towards keeping Americans safe primarily and only.
Yeah, you think? I mean, that's all that matters. We're at a really silly stage in American history right now. Congressman, thanks a lot for all of that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We spend a lot of time on this show talking about day-to-day political affairs. Up next, we'll welcome a thinker who says we're wasting our time because a looming debt crisis is going to make these red versus blue arguments irrelevant, and not in a good way. Plus, the president had an awkward meetup today with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. We'll give you every awkward detail. Stay tuned. Well, politics in America are more contentious than they've ever been, but just because the arguments are fierce doesn't mean they actually matter. James Howard Kunstler is an author and a social critic. He writes a popular blog whose name we can't tell you because this is a family-friendly channel, but it's really smart. In a recent article, Kunstler said America's two major parties are, quote, just playing a game of capture the flag on the deck of the Titanic. The coming national debt crisis, he predicts, will devastate the country and make our current policy debates seem quaint. James Howard Kunstler joins us now. Jim Kunstler, longtime listener, first-time caller. I'm a fan of your blog, I will say, which I can't really describe because its name is profane, but it's very smart. And I've been reading recently your warnings to the country about the coming debt crisis. And your point is basically our politics is so crazy because it's a way of ignoring the underlying problems which are real. Can you summarize your point?
Well, we have a basic problem with our economic dynamic. You know, a lot of it has to do with our energy. And in the heyday of American industrialism, we got 100 barrels of oil out of the ground for every barrel equivalent that we put in. And now with stuff like shale, it's more like 5 to 1. And the aggregate average is about 17 to 1. And we can't really run our industrial economy and all of its luxuries, accessories, and furnishings at that ratio. And so we've been trying to compensate for that by just ramping up a lot of debt, basically borrowing from the future in order to pay for the way we live now.
And you said that basically our political establishment, I want to put on the screen a quote for you because I think it's really smart, but our political establishment is intentionally not paying attention. Halloween's coming super early this year, you write, and it will be shocking, a surprise to those currently busy looking for Russians behind every potted plant in Washington, D.C. First, accept the premise that your country has lost its mind. That is what happens when societies and individuals can't face the true quandaries of a particular moment in their history. All of their attention gets channeled into fantasy, spooks, sexual freakery, conspiracies, perversion narratives, savior fairy tales. It's been quite a cavalcade of unreality these past 6 months, with great entertainment values for the connoisseur of the bizarre, until you're reminded that the fate of a nation is at stake. I think it's really smart. What happens when we hit the debt wall? What does that look like?
Well, when we hit the debt wall, we can't borrow from the future anymore to pay for what we're doing now. And we can't pay the invoices that are going to be coming into the Treasury, and we can't pay the entitlements that we're obligated to pay, and we can't pay back the interest on the previous debt. You know, one of the problems with having ramped up all this debt is that we now have to borrow more money to pay back the interest on the debt.
Right.
And, you know, that implies that we can't really generate a whole lot of new debt because it has very poor prospects of ever being paid back. We took...
Well, so tell me the timeline here, though. When is this going to happen? 100 years from now? 200 years from now?
No, I think it's going to be happening in the next few months. What happened in the fall was that the Treasury built up a kind of a war chest of about $400 billion. And the idea was that that would be available for Hillary Clinton, President Hillary Clinton, to use to get through the debt ceiling problem. And they managed to burn through about $90 billion a month since then. And there's there's less than $100 billion left in the Treasury for walking around money. And it's going to run out around Memorial Day. And the debt ceiling suspension that was negotiated between Speaker John Boehner and President Obama a couple of years ago, that just ran out yesterday, meaning the government cannot borrow more money without new authorization from Congress, and that requires the resolution of the members of Congress to come to some agreement about it. There's very little prospect they're going to be able to do that. The Democrats really just want to use this as a lever to make President Trump twist slowly, to make President Trump twist slowly in the wind, as the old saying goes. Yes. And you know, they're gonna do everything they can to make him back off, unless he backs off repealing Obamacare or lays off of the enforcement of deportation of illegal aliens. And the Republicans, of course, have their own historic aversion to raising the debt ceiling, and you know, they more or less have been forced to go along with it, but there are enough of them who really have an ideological opposition to it, so that it's really not likely to get resolved.
So, well, I guess what cracks me up is I haven't read any of this on the front page of the paper this week, but I guess that kind of proves your thesis in the first place, doesn't it? Jim Kunstler, well, the blog is, actually I can't tell you what the blog is, but put James Howard Kunstler into Google and you will find it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tucker. A pleasure.
I want to bring your attention tonight to a recent piece in the New York Times that was entitled "Diversity Lags as Students Are Matched with City Schools." The article concerns New York's 8 most competitive public high schools whose admissions are based exclusively on a standardized test. Quote, "Only about 10% of offers," the Times laments, "were extended to Black and Latino students, though those students make up about 68% of the school system." Now, the unspoken assumption in this piece is that sinister institutional racism, perhaps even white supremacy, is keeping minorities out of the city's best schools. There was just one problem. The students in New York's elite schools are not white. They're Asian. A whopping 52.5% of admitted students at the city's top public schools are Asian, many of them poor or the children of immigrants. But you would never know that from reading this piece in the New York Times. The piece never uses the word Asian, not once. Why? Because it's dishonest. Well, up next, in 2015, President Trump called German Chancellor Angela Merkel insane for letting in Muslim immigrants. Today, he had an awkward meeting with her. We'll tell you what happened in that meeting. Plus, James Rosen may be the most talented man at Fox News, a lot more talented than I am. He'll enter the friend zone to show off that talent, one that has nothing to do with television. This is going to be great, so don't miss this. Yes. Chancellor Angela Merkel today. It's Friday, so I'm sure you know the drill by now. After the meeting, he traveled down to Mar-a-Lago, Florida for the weekend. From where we go to Kristen Fisher, who is in Palm Beach tonight, pulling the plum assignment. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, Tucker, well, this was by far the most awkward and contentious face-to-face meeting that President Trump has had with another world leader. It started with this incredibly uncomfortable moment in the Oval Office, reporters chanting, or asking him, to do a handshake, and President Trump refusing to shake the German chancellor's hand. Then, during what 2 sources describe as a very contentious private meeting, President Trump reportedly pressed hard for Chancellor Merkel to increase her country's contributions to NATO. And at the end, at the beginning actually of their joint press conference, the German chancellor said that she was committed to doing just that. But it was another moment that stole the spotlight. President Trump doubling down on his unsubstantiated wiretapping claims by reminding Merkel and the world that her phones were tapped during the Obama administration.
As far as wiretapping, I guess, by this past administration, at least we have something in common, perhaps. And just to finish your question, We said nothing. All we did was quote a certain very talented legal mind who was the one responsible for saying that on television.
Now, the talented legal mind that he was referring to was Fox's senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. He claimed that the GCHQ, the British Electronic Intelligence Agency, helped Obama wiretap then-candidate Trump. But the Fox News division cannot substantiate that claim. And the British government says that these claims are ridiculous and they should be ignored. Now, today, the Department of Justice finally complied with the House Intelligence Committee's request to hand over any evidence that it might have to back up the president's claims. And tonight, the committee's chairman said that he's satisfied with the documents, but he wouldn't say if those documents contained anything that would validate the claims that President Trump made exactly 2 weeks ago from tomorrow. Tucker?
We'll be watching. Kristen Fisher, thanks. Time now for the Friend Zone. We invite one of our friends from inside the building here at Fox News. Tonight, we welcome Fox Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen. He is a legitimately talented man. He's an author, a comedian, a journalist, so good that the Obama administration hassled him in a pretty big way, but he has another hidden talent. He is an artist, a legitimate one. James Rosen joins us tonight.
So you're saying my skill as a reporter was a hidden talent?
That's all right. I'm saying that I bet not 10 people watching this are aware of what a talented artist you are. Legitimately, you've done drawings for people around the building. But this began, I didn't know until tonight, that you actually had a sideline as a kid at weddings and bar mitzvahs.
That's right. $100 an hour. So I began with, you know, my favorites, which were Snoopy and Charlie Brown. I'm not sure which, you know,
that's
want to
pretty
do,
good.
right? Then I moved on to Doonesbury, right, which was another of my favorites. I worshipped of several different artists and slavishly copied them, and I did that in broadcast journalism as well. Here's, you know, a little Doonesbury for you, okay, right?
That's good.
All right. Then I moved on to Batman and my idol of idols, Neil Adams, who's still around and still the greatest comic book artist of all time.
I agree with that.
You know, we can do some Batman for you very quickly.
But Doonesbury's got to be pretty easy.
Well, listen, you know, they all are highly stylized and require their own sort of just deft touch, if you will.
So you'd go to parties as a kid or events?
Right, here's a little quick Batman for you, right? Okay.
Look at that. Now, you've also caricatured people in the office here at Fox News. What is that?
That's a 2000 caricature of Brittany Humes.
Brittany Humes.
With a caption reading, "Rosen, you're so fired you never even worked here." And he was a good sport about that. There's a Charles Krauthammer. That's from, I think, 2008 or thereabouts. Him sort of as FDR. There's Fidel Castro leaving death in the dust, running away from death.
Wow.
A little Frank Lloyd Wright action at Falling Water. Who else do we got? There is the earliest drawing of mine that I still have, which is from when I was 7. An attempt, again, at copying Neil Adams at the outset there, and it still turns out more or less the same way.
By the way.
Jamie Rosen, which is what my parents call me. There's a Spielberg with some friends of his. So I figured what I might do on this occasion. You got a Springsteen and A Tale of Two Madonnas. I figured what I would do is just draw you on the air, okay, right now, live.
You can do that in 90 seconds?
Yeah, well, is that what we got left?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do something very quickly then. You know, the fact is you're kind of a nightmare for a caricature artist because you have symmetrical features. It would be a lot better if you had a really protruding nose or a, you know, a sort of very big ears.
I don't look in the mirror very much. I don't actually know.
Oh,
I don't have a... I don't.
You're on television. You're constantly looking in the mirror. Come on.
Ask the makeup artist.
Okay. All right, I will. As soon as we're done
I
with
hope you
this,
will.
I'm going to ask the makeup artist.
So, yeah, ask Debbie DeFrank. She can tell you. I don't look in the mirror enough. So, do you do this? I mean, does this come out? Is this something you would do for free? Do you do because you like it?
I've done it professionally, and I used to do the weddings and bar mitzvahs and sweet 16s. But, yeah, you know, mostly at this point I'm just doing it to savage my friends on plane rides.
You got 35 seconds to finish your assault on my appearance.
And you know what? Just for old time's sake, I'm going to put you in a bow tie. All right.
That is harsh. Can you take 20 pounds off? That's pretty good.
All right.
James Rosen. That's amazing.
There you go. A little bit, right?
You're good enough for Six Flags. We just put on the screen what you can do with a finer point pen.
Yes.
It's remarkable.
Thank you, sir.
And I mean that with total sincerity. You're truly the most talented artist I know personally.
So I'm still in the friend zone.
You are not only are you in the friend zone, you've ascended to the very top of the friend zone.
All right, let's get that on Twitter.
That. James Rosen, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the left is eating its own yet once more. A top figure in January's March on Washington says you can't be a feminist if you don't also reject Israel. Her rival feminists, including a star actress, are steaming. Wow, controversy. Up next. And welcome to Hannity. President Trump, he met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel today at the White House. Tonight, Ann Coulter, Sheriff David Clark, Geraldo Rivera, Circa News investigative reporter Sarah Carter will be here. But first, today's meeting highlighted major differences between Trump and Merkel's approach to key issues, and America can learn from Europe's many failures. And that is tonight's opening monologue. Now, President Trump and Chancellor Merkel, they capped off their first visit earlier today by holding a joint press conference. And President Trump made very clear where we stand on protecting this country. Watch this.
Our two countries must continue to work together to protect our people from radical Islamic terrorism and to defeat ISIS. I applaud Chancellor Merkel for Germany's contributions, both civilian and military, as a counter-ISIS coalition member. We also recognize that immigration security is national security. We must protect our citizens from those who seek to spread terrorism, extremism, and violence inside our borders. Immigration is a privilege, not a right, and the safety of our citizens must always come first.
Now, we've been covering in depth on this show how President Trump has promised to do everything within his power to stop radical Islamic terrorists from entering this country and putting you, the American people, in danger. Now, he plans on doing that in part by enacting extreme vetting of refugees. However, as we told you last night, the alt-radical obstructionist left here in America is trying to stop the president, and by doing so, they are showing that they are perfectly willing to gamble with your lives, the lives of the American people. At this point, in my opinion, the left here at home, they want to copy Germany and Europe's practice of letting waves of unchecked refugees pour into their countries. But tonight, the alt-radical left, they may want to think twice about this, and we'll show you exactly why. Now, here at home, we've seen an increase in radical Islamist attacks. Top officials have repeatedly warned that ISIS can, in fact, infiltrate the refugee population. And according to the FBI, there are 1,000 active ISIS-related cases right now in all 50 states. And earlier this month, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, revealed this shocking statistic about these ongoing investigations. Take a look.
Today, more than 300 people, according to the FBI, who came here as refugees are under an FBI investigation today for potential terrorism-related activities.
And in Europe, it's become far worse and more violent. Now, the continent has become the epicenter of terrorist attacks against the West. Now, since 2014, Europe has taken in over 3 million refugees and asylum seekers. Germany has led the way in Western Europe by accepting nearly 900,000 refugees in 2015 alone. Last month, Germany's Domestic Security and Intelligence Agency, the BFV, said the number of radical Islamists in the country has grown considerably, rising from just 100 in 2013 to almost 1,600 this year. And what we've seen is devastating and brutally violent attacks. Now, in November 2015, radical Islamists, they launched a series of attacks in Paris targeting a stadium, a cafe, a concert hall, where they slaughtered 130 people and wounded hundreds of others. And then in March of 2016, explosions at the airport and a metro station rocked the city of Brussels. On that case, 34 killed, and that's 34 innocent travelers, including Americans, 150 injured. And a few months later, in the city of Nice in France, during the French National Day, a truck attack killed 84 people, including 10 children. More than 200 others are injured. And days before Christmas in 2016, in Berlin, Germany, an Islamist plowed a truck into a crowded Christmas market, 12 dead and 50 more injured.
Here's the bottom line here. Liberals in this country can continue to be naive, have a pre-9/11 mindset with the hopes that another major attack is not going to happen. They can hope, they can pray, or we should be smart and vigilant and fully aware of all these dangers we face and allow President Trump to harden the policies and procedures so we can keep all of you and all of America and all of our children safe. Here now with reaction, the author of the best-selling book, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, Ann Coulter. And to me, this comes down to a very simple, basic, fundamental choice. The inconvenience of a few guests that want the privilege to be here, the inconvenience, or the gambling with the lives of the American people. Why is that such a hard decision for people?
No, and you're right in your monologue. Why can't we learn from Western Europe? Just a few weeks ago, German intelligence reports that 1,000 German residents have gone to fight with ISIS. Hundreds of them have come back to Germany. And what does Merkel do? She's setting them up with welfare because, you know, if they don't have a lot of welfare, that could radicalize them. Why don't we believe what these migrants say? They come to countries, they rape women, they're having a very difficult time learning not to rape women, even if they're infidel whores and have short skirts. What other immigrant group could not stop itself from raping masses of women? They march around saying, no, you're going to live under Sharia law. They commit terrorist acts. It's right in front of our eyes. And can you imagine? I mean, what Merkel has done is spreading throughout Western Europe. But just in Germany alone, combining German military discipline with Islamic ideology, it's terrifying what we're up against. Why would you do that in this country? And meanwhile, they keep trying to distract us with Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia is probably one of our better allies in the fight against Islam. They've been dealing with these Islamic terrorists for centuries now. And you remember, they're the ones who warned America about the Tsarnaev family that blew up the Boston Marathon. But no, our government officials wouldn't listen. Let's just worry about Russia now that how long ago did Reagan win the Cold War? It's over.
It's 6 months of a conspiracy lie. I mean, it's been nonstop. Here's a really tough question. I know you'll touch it, but so many are afraid to touch it. If you grow up under Sharia and you're a man and you think you have the right to tell women they can't drive, travel, they've got to dress a certain way, they can't be seen in public without a male relative, if you think you can throw gays and lesbians off of big buildings and kill them or hang them, if you persecute Christians and Jews, how do we know? How do you ever vet somebody's mind and heart if your culture, you grew up, that's what you learned, which directly contradicts our constitutional values? How do we vet that? Is that possible even?
No, you're absolutely right. In addition to the fact that there is no, Syrian FBI, they don't have a computer database, and there was testimony before the Senate last year saying there's nothing to vet, there's nothing we can look at. I also think it's worth mentioning, maybe you've shown these, and if you haven't, you should. I tweeted it out a few weeks ago, photos of women going to college in Afghanistan not that long ago. It was in the 70s, and it looks like an American college campus. They're wearing, skirts and button-down shirts and carrying their book bags. Things can turn overnight when you're bringing in these masses of people from very, very different cultures and make it a hate crime to ask them to assimilate, for the cherry on top. And they have no intent of assimilating. Plus, what are we getting out of this? It's one thing if we're bringing in nuclear scientists or engineers. I don't think we're getting a lot of those. But the vast majority of refugees are just instantly coming in, sucking up welfare that's meant for our people.
Yeah. Let me ask you a political question. One of my favorite clips of the snowflake left is you were on your buddy Bill Maher's show. And it's like June or July of 2015, and you say, yeah, Donald Trump has the best chance of winning. And the crowd just is laughing at you. I don't think they're laughing now. So you've been a very strong supporter. I'm pretty angry with the Republican Party. They seem ill-prepared, especially on repeal and replace. And it seems like the president's trying to clean it up. Hopefully they get there. Hopefully they get consensus. Are you happy with how things are going so far?
On most things, I'm disappointed with the Republican Congress. First of all, they ought to be impeaching those 2 travel ban judges immediately. It is totally outrageous. It is against the Constitution. The president, and by the way, every member of Congress, took an oath to uphold the Constitution. The commander-in-chief has authority over immigration. He has full authority not only through the Constitution and his duties as commander-in-chief, but through a federal law passed by Congress that's been on the books and reaffirmed in hundreds of Supreme Court cases, or rather court cases, at least a dozen Supreme Court cases. This is 100% the prerogative of the commander-in-chief. And to have a district court judge stepping in and saying, oh, no, the commander-in-chief doesn't have that duty. What else could a district court just say, oh, no, we're overruling your decision to go to war because, you know, someone in Hawaii could be affected. This is what we need Congress doing. I was hoping for a better repeal of Obamacare. Sean, they've had 7 years to work on it, and no one in Washington seems to understand the free market.
Yeah, they've had 8 years.
Hold, you know, I'll hold our Emperor God Trump harmless on Obamacare. That really isn't his job. He's supposed to be building the wall, deporting illegals, imposing the refugee ban. But with looking at the massive resistance a pro-American president we finally have, looking at the resistance he's getting, he could use an assist from Republicans in Congress. And other than a handful of them, he's not getting it.
All right. Ann Coulter, I owe you an email, by the way, and I'll get that to you right away. Thank you, as always. Appreciate you being with us. And Hannity, so earlier today, President Trump met with members of the Republican Study Committee, where he said some changes were made to the GOP Obamacare replacement plan, and that all representatives at the meeting said they were now planning to support the legislation. Watch this.
All of these no's, or potential no's, are all yeses. Every single person sitting in this room is now a yes. And we made certain changes, and very frankly little, although the block grant is very important, because I want the states to get the money and to run their program if they want to run it, because they can do it better than the federal government. They're better equipped than the federal government. I also want people to know that Obamacare is dead. It's a dead health care plan. It's not even a health care plan, frankly. Only because everyone knows it's on its last dying feet. The fake news is trying to say good things about it, okay? Fake media. And there is no good news about Obamacare. Obamacare is dead.
All right, joining us now with reaction, 2 representatives who were in that meeting today, Tennessee Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn and Majority Whip Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise is with us. Congresswoman, I'll start with you. And
sure.
Look, the Republican Study Group is a conservative group within the Congress, but it's not as conservative as, say, the Freedom Caucus. Their members tell me today they're still not on board, although they are some of the changes that I saw today that, you know, they're pretty happy with, you know, in addition to the Medicaid agreement with the study group, et cetera, that they're going to impose the states the option to impose work requirements, and also that they, you know, other new wording. These were all things that I know that the Freedom Caucus wanted. How close do you think we are to getting them on board, too?
I think we're very close, Sean. This is a bill that's moving the right direction. And today, the Vice President and President asked us to work with them, which, you know, we've been working with Whip Scalise. We have been working with the White House, and they've asked for our support on this. And I think it's important for Republicans to have a win. As you've said, this has taken longer than it should have taken. We need to continue to work on the Medicaid expansion, address those issues, and make certain that this is a bill that Republicans can support and send to the Senate for them to take up the House bill.
Yeah. Steve, where are you with the Freedom Caucus guys? Because they've been the ones that have communicated with me the most, that they say the president, A++. He's been reaching out to them, talking to them. They appreciate it. The president's listening. Some changes they wanted are in the bill, but they feel the leadership has not reached out as much to them. Why?
I've been talking to Freedom Caucus members directly, Sean. In fact, today at the meeting with the RSC chairman, Mark Walker, and other RSC members, there were 2 Freedom Caucus members there who said they're going to vote for the bill, which included one member, Gary Palmer, who had voted against the bill in the Budget Committee yesterday. So with these changes, you talk about something revolutionary, block granting Medicaid, giving governors complete ability to block grant the Medicaid program. That's a revolutionary reform conservatives have been wanting for decades. That's now agreed to by the president, and that'll be in the bill. And the work requirements, where
Those are, by the way,
governors
those are
can
two
actually have
things
that
that they
option.
told me. Those are two things specifically that Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan told me that they wanted in the bill. Can we?
Right.
Is
Those
there
are big
anything
wins, and that's what brought some of the Freedom Caucus members that were in the room today to say they're now for the bill. So this, like Marcia said, this bill's moving in the right direction, and members are engaged. But what's most important, Sean, the president is directly engaged. President Trump said, I am behind this bill 100%. He wants this bill on his desk to repeal and replace Obamacare and put patients back in charge
by
of
the
their
end of
health
next
care.
week.
So his help is a lot. Yeah, his help has
Now,
been tremendous,
Marcia,
and he's rolled up his sleeves and gotten to work on this directly.
Yes.
Is there anything to learn from this? In other words, should consensus have been built before the bill instead of this public fight and intramural squabbling, civil war? Because from my perspective, you cannot not do this. We're at the point, this is the president's first major signature legislation here. And it seems that it was maybe you wrote the contract before the deal points were made. It seemed like you got the cart ahead of the horse a little bit. Do you think it could have been handled differently and better?
I do. You know, one of the things Republicans don't take the time to do is establish the predicate. And Republicans should have started talking about why we have to repeal and what we're doing to put patient-centered health care in place. We should have been doing that coming November 9th.
Right.
And then leading up to this, building out that big picture, and then working more closely, conservatives, us House conservatives, with the leadership and, of course, with the White House. The president and vice president have been terrific. They've said, tell us what we need to do. We're working on this. Let's solve it. Yes.
And the Congressman, you think you're going to have the requisite number. Are you working hand in hand with the Senate? Is the Senate bill going to be much different? And when you get the House and Senate together in conference, are you confident that this is all going to get done?
Yeah, I think most senators like the direction
losing
we're
is
going.
not an option here. Yeah.
That's right.
Failure is not an option. But look at this, Sean, something else that just got included that today brought National Right to Life to write a letter of strong support of this bill. This will probably be one of the most pro-life pieces of legislation with the Hyde protections and defunding Planned Parenthood. That's a big win, too, for conservatives.
That's a big win.
So they are enormous wins. Those are things that we have wanted to see happen, and I think the Senate is going to be ready to take our bill up. Yeah, they're going to be ready to take it up. Thanks.
All right. We're going to see you both next week, hopefully, and maybe we can get this thing finished. And up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
Don't even think about it. We will build the wall. Don't even think about it.
The president promising the border wall will, in fact, be built. This as his new budget proposal slashes funding to sanctuary cities. Geraldo Rivera, Sheriff David Clark joined the debate, and also later tonight.
What time did y'all start drinking today?
We didn't stop from last night. Adderall all day and night. Woo!
Tonight, another sneak peek from our spring break special that begins next week.
Don't even think about it. We will build the wall. Don't even think about it. Our southern border will be protected always. It will have the wall. Drugs will stop pouring in and poisoning our youth. And that will happen very, very soon.
All right, that was President Trump in Nashville earlier this week, promising to secure the southern border and finally build the wall. Meanwhile, President Trump's proposed budget takes aim at sanctuary cities. The LA Times described this budgetary proposal. They wrote, quote, Trump wants to slash $210 million in federal reimbursements to state and local jails that hold illegal immigrants convicted of crimes while in the country illegally. Joining us now with reaction, author of Cop Under Fire, moving beyond hashtags of race, crime, and politics for a better America. Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, you and I go back and forth on this, and, you know, every time I point out to you, I sat there with all these local law enforcement guys in Texas, and there was 642,000 crimes in a 7-year period committed against Texans alone, including rape, including murder, including drugs, including kidnapping. I mean, to me, this is now common sense. I really, you like to say you're a common sense guy. Isn't that common sense?
First of all, let's start on a happier note. I wore this green tie in honor of you, my Irish brother from another mother. And Sheriff Clark, nice to see you. I think that, and you and I have discussed this, the issue of sanctuary cities, funding, defunding, and so forth, will be where the rubber hits the road, the fight between red and blue, the fight between left and right. I think that this, once the Obamacare stuff is sorted out, the Russian stuff is sorted out, this will be the issue, I think, that preoccupies the conflict between the two sides.
All right, but let me ask you as a lawyer. You're a lawyer.
Right.
We have a rule of law. So if cities are defying the rule of law, shouldn't there be some consequences for that? Isn't that called aiding and abetting?
That's an excellent point. Just yesterday, though, the Chief Justice of the California courts wrote to Attorney General Sessions and DHS Secretary General Kelly and told them to keep the ICE agents out of the California courts. California does not appreciate. I foresee not only legal conflict, Sean, but I foresee conflict between, imagine a state or local cop facing an ICE agent and the cop saying to the ICE agent, you shouldn't be in here, this is a courtroom, we don't want you. I see the potential for conflict. I think everyone's got to cool it down.
You may be very well right. You probably actually are. And Sheriff Clark, that's a problem, though, because this is now a breakdown in civil society, and it becomes lawlessness when you have states or municipalities deciding which laws they want to obey and which laws they refuse to obey, and they're willing to aid and abet criminals.
First of all, happy St. Patrick's Day, Sean. But
We're
you're
all
right.
Irish
There's
today.
a lot of posturing. There's a lot of posturing going on right now, but I think in the end, cooler heads will prevail. Is there anybody who thinks that Donald Trump is not serious about building this wall, sealing that border for real, to stop the flow of illegal immigrants into this country, the drugs, the weapons, so on and so forth, the criminal gangs, the cartels? He is going to get this done. I know he is. And I'm going to help him do it as it relates to Milwaukee, which is why I sent a letter of intent last week to the acting director of ICE asking to be certified to participate in the 287G program, which will give, after training and some other certification, will give my deputies and corrections officers in the jail the authority, after they're deputized as U.S. Marshals, the authority to enforce immigration. What we're talking about here, and I want to make this clear, and, it sounds like my good friend Geraldo's starting to soften a little bit on this, and that's a good thing. We're talking about, and in my case, criminal illegal aliens. We are not talking about doing home raids and business raids to look for people in the country illegally. We are going to identify people who've been convicted of serious crimes in this country and schedule them for deportation. That's not extreme. That's reasonable. And anybody who is not for that is advocating for criminal behavior, because sanctuary cities provide a safe haven for criminal activity and criminal illegal aliens.
I totally disagree with that because nothing prevents cops from enforcing the law. If someone commits a crime, they get arrested. What this is all about is whether that cop now has to hold the person they arrest after their sentence is served or they've been acquitted, just hold them for a federal immigration hold. If the over 350 municipalities and states have said, no, we're not going to do this. We are not immigration officials. We refuse to cooperate. This is not about law enforcement. This is only about whether county or municipal cops are also, federal deputies, in essence, enforcing immigration law. That's apart from the criminal law, which, of course, they have to enforce.
All right, last word, Sheriff.
I agree, and they can't. Well, they can't make local jails and sheriffs and chiefs hold these individuals. They're asking for some cooperation in assisting them in doing that, and I don't think that's a big thing to do. Had the San Francisco jail area held on to the guy that killed Kate Steinle, she'd be alive today. So what President Trump has made it clear, the catch and release days are over. That's what we're talking about. You're right, Geraldo. They can't force the jails to do it, but there'll be some penalties. And when you talk about the type of dollars we're talking about, that's going to leave some huge gaps in some of this local funding, and eventually they're going to start to do the right thing. They will. Trust me on this.
All right. To my two good friends and Irish brothers, happy St. Patrick's Day to both of you. And coming Welcome back to Hannity. Now, journalist Sarah Carter and John Solomon of Circa News, they have been breaking many big stories this week. According to their first bombshell report, a computer scientist who is a Hillary Clinton donor pushed the Trump-Russia server narrative, which eventually, of course, led to an investigation by the FBI. They found no wrongdoing. And just yesterday, Sarah and John reported that sources told them that Russian Alpha Bank, which allegedly had this computer connection to the Trump organization, asked the Department of Justice for help to identify a computer in the U.S. that they believe is being hacked to make it look like communication exists between the president and Moscow. Sarah Carter joins us now. I said this to you last night. This is now becoming more like a new edition of Homeland every single day with these new developments. But what they're saying on the Russian side of things is they have been able to trace back that there's somebody they think within the United States that is faking a relationship, a computer relationship between that bank and the Trump organization. Do we know if there was the same thing going on and investigated in October?
They suspect that it was. That's very interesting, because even back in October, they were very concerned about this. Although there was no data going between the two servers, they were still concerned that it happened. So what they did was they basically intercepted. They put something inside their computer server in order to track and trace if this happened again. And it did. It happened again in February, and then it happened again March 11th and March 13th. And at that point, Alpha Bank, their cyber experts, their specialists, were able to trace it. And that's where they collected all the data and the information, which we were able to view as well, Sean. So we were able to see that for ourselves.
So all of your reporting and discoveries, you were able to confirm that, in fact, Trump servers were surveilled. You're able to confirm that law enforcement found no collusion whatsoever, even though it keeps getting reported, this conspiracy by almost everybody else in the media. Where is this going next? Because if that's the case, is it possible the whole thing could have been set up by people connected to the Democratic Party? Can it get that deep?
I mean, it could. We don't know yet, right? We're still looking. We're still investigating. I know one of the things that I'm most concerned about, it's something as well that the House chairman of the Intelligence Committee is most concerned about, is the leaks, right? Because that's going to answer a lot of our questions. Why was General Flynn, Lieutenant General Flynn's name exposed in those phone calls? How many more, did they have a back door through surveillance? One of the questions, Sean, that nobody's really asking is, and I think Chairman Nunes will ask these questions of FBI Director Comey, as well as others in the NSA and the CIA. Was there an increase of viewership of these raw data during December? I mean, were people going into these SCIFs and looking at raw data that had names of persons associated to Trump or President Trump himself? I think that's something that they are going to be asking.
I had Pete Hoekstra on my radio show today, and he was a former chair of the Intelligence Committee, and he wrote a column in the Wall Street Journal, Can Americans Trust Their Intelligence Community? Now, I would argue probably 99.9%, yeah, we can. I have a lot of faith and a lot of, I just believe that these are people serving their country. But you only need one bad apple. Is it possible, based on the WikiLeaks revelation, that the malware exists, that they could literally hack into something from any country and pin it on another country? In other words, spoof it. They can. Go ahead.
Sure, they said they can. I mean, that's what we saw. I mean, if those documents are true, then yes, they can. I suspect that we have some very, very smart people in our intelligence community. What I think is most concerning is they won't even have to go that far, right? If you have FISA records, I mean, on foreign surveillance, so you're looking at foreigners, any telephone call then candidate Trump, now President Trump, made back then would have been picked up, right? Could somebody have viewed those? Anybody else in his team, could those have been viewed? How many Americans are being surveilled that make phone calls overseas? These are the questions that we have to ask. And why weren't those names protected? Why was the raw data so exposed that it leaked to the press and revealed the name of an American speaking to a Russian ambassador is a very classified document, Sean. I don't know how much I can stress this. Every intelligence source that I speak with says this is such a highly classified document. And is there an investigation?
So that means that means it has to be high up. These leaks then have to be coming from a very high level. Is that true?
That would be, I would say, based on my reporting, based on the sources that I've spoken with, not any GS9 would be able to go in there and see these particular types of documents. These documents would have to be signed off. They would literally have to be signed off by the director of the FBI or the head of the CIA. I mean, nobody can just walk in there and just look at these, despite the expansion of the 12-333.
You add that to who advanced the narrative, there's a political component, and this is why getting to the bottom of the deep state, the lifetime bureaucrats, the Obama holdovers, there's something is going to break here, and I think you're probably going to be the one to do it. Thanks for updating us all week. We'll have you back next week. Thanks again, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
And coming
Sean.
up next tonight.
Millions of hardworking U.S. citizens have been left behind by international commerce, and together we can shape a future where all of our citizens have a path to financial security. The United States will respect historic institutions, and we will also recognize the right of free people to manage their own destiny.
Hi, that was President Trump earlier today during a joint press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, talking about the need for fair trade policies between the U.S. and our trading partners. Joining us now with reaction, former UN spokesperson Rick Grenell and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth. Rick, I'll start with you. The most amazing thing, a lot of conservatives like him on the Supreme Court, vetting the wall, his economic plan that will be upcoming, reforming the tax code, energy independence. But a sticking issue, Rick, is the issue of trade. One of my best friends, Mark Levin, that's the thing he worries about the most. What's your reaction? I think he's negotiating all the time. That's my take, my interpretation.
Yeah, it's the art of the deal. He's a great negotiator. But we also have to remember, Sean, that we have tried to win the presidency before. We haven't won, and we won because we had so many Reagan Democrats, so many union guys in the Midwest come over to Donald Trump. I think that he's onto something here, that we haven't been able to be very successful when it comes to trade deals because we've always put American businesses at a disadvantage when they're trying to go up against other companies from around the world. So Donald Trump is onto something. He's a businessman. He's recognizing the fact that our workers have not been at the forefront, and he's putting them there.
And Lisa, if we can ever get the Congress to finish this health care bill, it's pathetically slow. Arguing in public like this is idiotic to me. I think it should have been a consensus bill from the get-go. Not easy, but putting that aside for just a second, I think Rick's onto something because I call this the forgotten man and woman election. But it's really going to be the economic plan to me, allowing trillions of multinational corporate money to be repatriated at a low tax rate, dropping the lowest, dropping the corporate tax rate from the highest in the industrialized world to the lowest. And, of course, energy, that's going to be a big component of economic growth. That's going to bring back a lot of the jobs that I think everyone's hoping for. If it comes down to it, is it dangerous to have a trade war? Is it wrong to demand free and fair trade?
Well, I think let's see what President Trump proposes in some of these negotiations. We haven't seen any of that yet. So I think a lot of people jump to conclusions about what we're going to see from President Trump before actually seeing what he's going to do. Take foreign policy, for an instance. President Trump said today, look, I'm not an isolationist. And what have we seen since he took office? Look, he said that he was going to take the fight to our adversaries, that he was going to stand up for the United States, and he's done just that. He's put sanctions against Iran. The Department of Justice announced on Wednesday that they're indicting Russian officials for the first time for the Yahoo hacking that happened. I think it was in 2014. Rex Tillerson's going to be in China tomorrow to try to put pressure on them, and North Korea saying that nothing is off the table. So look, this is a guy who's very much engaged on the world stage, very much engaged in protecting America.
Let me get a response from Rick. Rick?
Look, I think that I spent a lot of time in the Midwest during the campaign, specifically in Cuyahoga County. And I just saw from the beginning in early September, Sean, you had voters, men and women who were part of unions who had said, I just haven't been able to vote for a Republican lately, and I'm really excited. I'm not only voting for Donald Trump, but I'm really excited to vote for Donald Trump. He is onto something in terms of being able to bring back corporate money back to the United States, while at the same time fixing some of these policies that have not benefited our men and women who are working in unions. I was told by one guy in Cuyahoga County that he was a Democrat, union guy, he didn't want to hear any more about climate change, because what he heard when Democrats talked about climate change was that he wasn't going to be able to build anything anymore. He was an electrical union guy. He wanted to produce. He wanted to go forward, and the Democrats were losing him.
All right, guys. Thank you both. By the way, Rick, your tweets are hilarious. You remind me of me on Twitter. Coming up.